Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
All right. So super excited to actually get into today's topic because we're hitting up something a little bit different. I know we've covered off everything from mindset through to, preparation for shows, through to reverse dieting, nutrition. We've done a little bit of everything, but today we're going to get a little bit more into the concept of training and some of, I guess, the biggest mistakes that we see people make and some of the ways that you can be leveraging, how you apply yourself inside of the gym, what exercises you're doing, and how you're approaching your sets and reps so that you get the most out of your goals. But before we dive into that, we've got two households here. We're in the background. You might hear today from time to time a little bit of a, come on, because NBA playoffs are up, and Steph, you know all about it. Our boys play in the same fantasy league. Come on, we never get a break.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so funny. They stay connected so well throughout the year. I think more than us because they get to do this league in fantasy and that's their hobby, but we get to connect on a different level on stage. So we got our own thing going on, versus with them, they definitely bromance their whole freaking year with doing this fantasy leagues. But I hear you. Look, sports is huge. It's huge here. I mean, it's actually kind of what makes America run. So it's definitely one of those things that I'm sure you guys are missing. We are very lucky and fortunate to be in the position to have fans available to go to, actual sport events. So that is also, like I said, it's very fun and it's happening more and more often. So it's more of a buzz here. I don't know how it is over there, but it is pretty exciting. Things are just opening up more and more and more here as the states go on. How about you guys?
It is pretty good. Like we've had the same sort of thing. We've got events. We've got full sort of audiences now. We're actually getting more and more ease back on restrictions. So we're getting less and less stringent.
How good does it feel though?
If that makes sense.
It's just making things feel
beautiful. Yeah, it's so good. And I just booked our tickets to go. This will be my first international flight since pre-COVID. So
yes,
I'm so pumped. Awesome. We go over to New Zealand. So for all of our listeners, we will be in New Zealand. We'll be running a New Zealand workshop on the 26th of June. Put that in your diaries. Everyone that can be there to meet and greet and just learn from us all, that would be great. But to all of my team, I cannot wait to see all of you. I'm super excited because like you guys, you're preparing now to head to the Bahamas in the next couple of days. I've got a couple of teammates that I'm peak weeking the hell out of right now. Well,
I'm excited. Just like you said, international flight, this is actually one of the things I've been looking forward to, being able to, go relax at the beach, but at the same time, watch the team slay the stage. And I did see your, obviously some of your clients that were training for the show that WBFF is promoting. And it's just awesome to still have, of course, your teams still, kind of connect with ours. All the girls always come up to me, Allie's my coach, and then it's so cute because they immediately kind of connect with me, thinking you're we're sisters, which we are. So it's just exactly. I got you, girl. I got you.
It's really like that too. Even before they're getting to a stage where I know you guys are going to be, I'm always check out Dynasty because they're our sister team, and literally you'll be babied by them too. So if if there's only a few of them, I always know that I still feel like I can mother hen them vicariously through you guys. So it's great.
Hey, likewise.
Exactly. And look, we've been very blessed, even though we've been unable, which is really difficult for us because you know what we're like. For 7 years now, we are present with every single team. We travel so much for all of these shows that it's been really unique and different for me to have to be on FaceTime at random times of the night or the morning because I'm seeing everyone and having them check in, looking at visual cues with the way the conditioning is coming through and making changes on the fly. It's very different for me. And I'm definitely experiencing FOMO. I'm not a person that does that, right? I don't really ever look at something and go, oh my God, I need to be in that or I'm missing out. And I'm having moments of that in this last sort of 6 to 9 months as things have been rolling out. I'm like, oh my God, I want to be there doing that. Damn it.
Honestly, That's where I feel
like
like
going
half
to
of,
Bahamas with you guys now.
oh,
I would be there doing that.
I know, look at as I'm literally reminiscing. First time I went to the Bahamas was literally when we went with you guys. So it's just such a memory lane for us. So look, I'm actually kind of saddened. It's gonna kind of be one of those bittersweet things that I know you're not gonna be there, but we will definitely be there to support your team as well as, you know, anybody that is on stage. It's just one of those things that when it's a smaller event, because the borders are still closed for so many countries, it's just going to be really good quality. I think, of course, when the borders are open, you just get a lot more quantity, but you also get the mixture of quality in the mix of that, versus right now, only those that you normally are like, look, I'm at my best, I'm going to just give it all and just go and give it a shot. You know, that's normally the kind of people that will like end up going. So it's going to be a damn good show. So for sure, anybody that's, you know, tuning in.
I think so too. Like even looking at the quality of our athletes, I'm like, this is going to be a hard lineup. Like this will actually be, it might be small, but it's going to be a tough one to judge, I think. And I love those. Like I always say to my team, I'd much rather be standing against the most competitive physiques I could possibly be against to win than be standing in substandard. You know what I mean? Like I really would. I think that that's the challenge of what we do. It's why we do it, right? To push ourselves to that limit, to create and elicit those changes that are the fine lines, right? It's literally 1% between the top three guys listening to this. It's not like you leave some bounds ahead. It's marginals you're winning by.
You
like
hit
quite
it.
Actually.
You really did. Like I think what you just said there is actually so relevant, even with these, you know, upcoming shows that are coming up, is you cannot say you are not, you know, in a position that you aren't good enough for quality or you know, pro quality, better said. It's just the fact that if somebody just out edges you and is just a little bit better, doesn't mean that you're not really close. It just means that, hey, maybe just wasn't your shot for that show, you know, just come back. But it's not, I absolutely hate, you know, I think feeling or hearing more of like, oh, I got cheated out of my spot. We obviously had that podcast already, but still just more of those, you know, just trying to make sure, look, I think it's the quality. If you went up against 5 badass women and they're the best, they could be honestly all champions, why would you be upset? I know somebody has to win, somebody has to be the last place, you know, so it is what it is, you know, and but anyway, so going into the topic.
That's an opportunity for learning and feedback. And one of the biggest things you need to be thinking about is, right, how then do I translate the feedback I'm given into the gym and into what I'm doing so that the resulting outcome in however many months or years time when you hit the stage again exponentially improve physique, right? One of the biggest things that I think I see day to day, and I think you'll probably definitely agree with this, it's something that you see as a coach too, it's this isn't hard enough for me, or there's not enough exercises, or they're not complex. Okay, well, let's actually break.
I could do more. I know exactly what you mean.
How many times do you hear it? And, you know, it's the most frustrating thing you can possibly hear, because guess what? We both know they're in the gym and they're just racing through the motions. They're not dialed in. They're not looking at active, you know, recruitment. They're not looking at, you know, their actual form, their setup, their bracing. They are not aware of where there might be a potential breakdown in any of the mechanics of that lift. And they are literally probably thinking about everything else they got to do when they get home.
They're not progressive.
Like they're not even in the gym. They're having an out of body experience. They're just throwing some weight around while they're doing it.
That's exactly right. They're going through the motion. Really, I call that going through the motion, right? Yes, I agree. And that's where one of the areas that I really get annoyed by, if I start seeing those numbers aren't really hit in progression. That's actually one of the number one areas that I'll be actually assessing within a client, whether if they're not just getting changed, but if they're really not adapting even to their training also, right? Like it's how much is their frequency? How many sets are they actually doing? Are they even working sets? Or are you even just doing those as warm-up sets? You know how so many people just waste some sets just kind of warming up versus actually making them a working set, knowing your RPE. This is also your rep, obviously perceived exertion per exercise is really important for you to also know what you're lifting. So I think all of these things is a way to quantify really your session, not the actual workout itself, is grading yourself. One of the things that I do when I'm going into a workout and I try to teach my clients is it's more of an effort grading versus actually grading the actual exercises or the format or the workout. It would be saying, from a scale of 1 to 10, what was my effort level? Was that, obviously 7, that's, 70%, that's really all I was able to give, or, I could barely walk out of this freaking gym. My legs are noodles. That's 100. Like that's a 10, no doubt. Right. Like I progressively loaded every set. Like I hit a freaking top set and now I hit a PR. Obviously a PR does not mean that you are progressing 100%, right? In like hypertrophy, but it's a freaking awesome feeling when you hit a PR and your performance has gone up, which to me, it's one of those things that it's kind of counterbalance. Like I know I don't need to hit a PR every single time, not just to prevent injury, but also I need to try to do it for, some performance aspects. But what would you say, Ali, is like one of your top ways that you like to, grade and obviously, watch your clients and make sure that they are
I think for me, it's looking at no mechanical breakdown. So I like to see that an athlete or a client, even if it's just a gen pop when they're beginning, obviously the exercise selection and structure of the program is different at that point. But what I'm looking for is, are they sufficiently taking an appropriate amount of time to set up that session for themselves? So, not racing out, doing this, quickly throwing it in between something else and something else, not even thinking about it, not warming up, going into it cold. Like if we're cutting corners, that is when our body is 100% going to talk back to us with nagging pains, injuries, and it will literally not recruit what we want to recruit and get the result we want, right? Sure. So I'm really big on setting up, a massive focus on dynamic activation. So whenever someone's working with me, we go through a process where we're setting up, the preliminary work before the actual work, so that then they don't waste those sets with warm-ups that aren't necessarily the working set. Nice. It's looking at, and also looking at what's appropriate for what they're doing. Like I've got athletes that work with me that are, professional AFL players. I've got a couple of professional swimmers. I've got a professional boxer. So it's a completely different level of priming, right? So it's looking at what is going to be the most appropriate thing to warm up prior to their actual workout that's relevant to their workout. And then in that process, what they should find is moving into the set, they're capable then of controlling the actual mechanics way better. My two main areas that I really love to see someone, sort of actually prime prior to loading is the core, because I think that the core is the biggest area of control, and the biggest fault that we see a lot of the times with people having injuries inside of a lift or failing, I guess, to recruit the actual primary muscles we're trying to hit is because they're disengaged in the core, and they're doing that, common mistake where it's that excessive lumbar extension, elevation of the rib cage. The minute that they breathe in, right, they don't lock it down, they get the anterior pelvic tilt, and then they overhead load or barbell squat and compress. And they're definitely not stabilizing their spine, right? And look, I'm the queen of backs here. So with my back issues, like I guess probably what you're getting from this is because of my experience with my own, realm of overcoming, injury and setting up foundations that are, really powerfully strong. These are at the forefront of everything that I do because I just know the complete importance of them, right? And how many women do we get come to a step that have excessive anterior pelvic tilts, the big lordosis, the lumbar lordosis? They walk with their ass out in the air and their boobs up and they've got this massive lumbar extension. And then you imagine if they want to look good while they're squatting in the gym, so they keep that whole tension and that whole crappy level of, like rounding out and extension. And then they go and they load themselves. Yeah. Like, holy shit. It's honestly, I'm just, every time I see it, I'm like, honestly, my heart's breaking inside my chest because I'm just waiting for the crack and, the shit to fall apart. Like, I really am. It's
because you've been through it. Yeah, absolutely. Because you've been through that. I think, it is a tendency. 100%. I think it's something people oversee and they're just not aware. I think a lot of women don't realize that from a young age, they're actually causing this by, like you said, attention. They're trying to like walk a certain way and they're actually like trying to stick their glutes out and by arching their back. And it's one of those things where if you walk like that from a young age, imagine what's going to happen after a decade, you know, and like that's
so
just
I mean, we do a little bit of that on the stage, right, Steph? Like it does call for a little bit of that on the stage, and there is time for it, but it's not all the time. And there's no way that you and I would wouldn't get under a barbell and do that though. Like Jesus Christ.
Good God, I can put something above my head from one of the things that I'm doing in my posing. Like only my arms above head, like no weight above head by no means, because we are doing some contorting there. Like we are definitely doing some pelvic tilts.
Oh my God, we're like big bloody pretzels on stage. We're like big pretzels
for sure.
Stage.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like it's time and a place, but I think some women just don't realize they're actually doing it and causing these, you know, obviously bad mechanics to go into their training. So if you're one of those females that really arches, listen to this.
Oh my God, exactly right. Because, you know, for the people that aren't unaware, that constant excessive anterior pelvic tilt, right, which is associated with lumbar lordosis, that extension that you get, that real rounding out and bubble butt stick out, that contributes significantly to facet joint compression over time. And that's the sort of shit you don't want to be doing, guys. That's where you start getting into the realm of having disc-related issues and where you're starting to have lower back pain and all sorts of things. So let's not have that happen, and let's really focus on getting your core activated prior to lifting and keeping it engaged and thinking about that bracing of your core, you know, during the whole mechanic of the lift, right? So when we can do this, then we limit, you know, the issues that come from limiting. It does two ways, right? You protect the spine, protect the back, but you also then reduce the range of motion issues you can get that are limiting shoulders, because once you start having proper core control, all of your joints are moving like they should be, and you're going to have a lot less potential implications for injuries, right? So I never overlook that. When we get back to the question about how I think someone's progressing, it's how strong is their core, how stable are they in isolated unilateral work and you know, movement patterns. So, you know, are they capable of being stable on one leg? Can they lunge? Can they squat? Can they have good form without mechanical breakdown in the basics? And then we start to progress. So that's more for me, like nail the basics, master the art of, you know, core control, master the art of unilateral strength and stability, and then we can progress you. Don't come to me and tell me it's too easy until I can see you squatting really well on one leg, lady.
Amen, sis. That's exactly right.
Go back to the drawing board until you can. You have no right. You cannot earn the right to load until you've earned the mastering of the foundational movements.
And hear that again, everybody. You cannot load and master that unless you actually have done unilateral work that strengthens both legs equally, both sides equally. This doesn't just apply to your lower body. This applies to your upper body as well. That's actually one of the areas I focus the most on just personally, because I have such bad imbalances from just my right to left. And this goes from upper to lower, and which causes a lot of hip external rotation on one side and a hip internal rotation on the other. So it's actually, you know, a little mixture of both going on in my side. So it's very difficult, you know, to do some movements, and I have to retrain myself by not just doing mobility, but also trying to actually activate, you know, these muscles by trying to properly, you know, balance my hips. Number one, are they stable? Are they both linear? Are they both actually parallel? You know, and from there, am I able to engage my core, brace, you know, and stack my rib cage right above my hips. And if this is all, you know, obviously these are all things you should be focusing on for every movement.
Correct.
You know, and this applies for even any upper body movements. Like if you're not stable in your core, stable in your hips, you're most likely going to start causing even more imbalances as you train. And this is actually something I've personally experienced, has been that over the time of you not knowing what you're actually doing. This is when I was younger. I lifted weights. Like growing up playing sports, they actually make you lift weights. They actually take you to the weight room, you squat, you bench, you know, you do the basics. You do like the, you know, the big five. Like that's the way I look at it versus, you know, afterwards, it's like you kind of get in the gym and you start just hitting machines and you're like, okay, like let's hop around and try to figure this out. And that's honestly when I got, you know, a little interested in training itself. So anyway, because of these things, I never really focus on unilateral work. And I was always more dominant on a side, which was my right. And this has caused a lot of actual imbalances that were actually, they were brought to surface in competing. You could really tell, some hypertrophy and some certain muscles were actually a lot smaller or imbalanced, and you can really start seeing, okay, I could definitely bring up my glutes on the left side versus my right glute. Girl, you got it going on, but this left one has like complete, atrophy.
Like
atrophy
going left.
like
left
exactly.
glute, wake the fuck up.
Wake up. What's going on over there?
Did you not hear the alarm or what?
Like she slept for a long time. Yeah, my left glute slept for a very long time. So because of that, I think this goes with what we're talking about, which is, how to properly train, how to optimize your actual workouts to meet your goals. And so my goals changed throughout my journey. And I'm sure, Allie, your goals have changed so many times, numerously, right? And I think that this is something that you have to learn for your own self. Everyone's body anatomy is so similar but different. Okay, your sculpture and like your genetic actual bone structure is different. So trying to understand and see what you've done through your whole lifespan that has caused maybe these imbalances even more, of course, if they were self-inflicted or if there were accidents, like, of course, Allie, you had to come back and actually had to relearn everything because of your, your accident. So I think for everybody listening, if you're not focusing on unilateral work, please to break it down. Don't progressively load and keep getting stronger in your deadlifts and squats or presses. Try to break it down from right to left, whether if that's your legs, your lower body or your upper body, and definitely engage your core. Start with mobility work, warm up, cool down. You hit it there when trying to actually know how are they properly warming up and cooling down.
Yeah, so being able to work the muscle in its full end of range motion is super, super important, right? So if you're going into a certain pattern of movement and you're already tight in an opposing muscle group, you're not actually going to be able to execute that to its full potential and reap the actual mechanics of that lift. So you really want to be thinking about keeping as supple as a leopard, which I love that book. Anyone that would like to have a look at how best to perhaps approach lengthening certain things, or even he's even got some great dynamic activation stuff in there. I think it is becoming the art of the supple leopard or becoming supple leopard, something like that. Anyway, I'll find it and I'll link it to this, but that's what I always remember is the supple leopard. And it's really an epic resource, but it's very important that you are looking at this along those lines. So what I think you'll also hear from this is that when Steph and I are approaching these things, and we've gained a deep respect for the requirement for the pre and the post care, more so through actual injury and issues, right? So we've lived it, and that's why we've got a respect for it. Anyone listening to this that has never had a major injury, well, you know what? I pray to God you never have one, because I pray to God you learn from the lessons we're discussing and you go and implement the right things, and don't be dickheads like we were, where we just race through things, cut corners, when you know what, I feel good, so I don't need to do these things. I don't need to be more mobile. What's mobility important for? I mean, hello,
what's
so many
things.
But even when I don't have pain now, I still do these things. It's super, super, super important. And a byproduct actually of some of my issues over the years was that I did get a few little imbalances in some really random places because my nerves were pinched off completely down one side of my body for such a substantial period of time. My actual fibers weren't recruiting properly because they weren't getting all of the messages. And so I had to do a fair bit of work on ratio training. So I was implementing a higher percentage of reps per set on my not so good leg. I never called it my bad leg because there's no such thing. It's just my slightly underdeveloped leg, because it was becoming as developed as it should be. I was focused on it, people. And it was
just a little slower.
Literally just focusing on the mechanics of the activation. I'd spend more time on it. And let me tell you something, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Steph. Whenever someone says to me, I have trouble feeling this certain muscle group, it might be, I don't know, quad, it might be glute, it might be rear delt, it might be whatever. The very first thing I say is cut your load in half, double your time under tension. As counterintuitive as that may seem, it is the most effective way to completely wake up a dormant or stubborn muscle group, and it makes you think about the activation. Like, you've got to literally sit inside think about meditation. When we think on breath work, right, we're focused on the count of the breath. If you're focused on the count of an execution under tension, and you're actually thinking about this one muscle and you're taking it through, it's a hot chili of an exercise to do too, people. Like, you are taking it to an absolute burner. you're going to be feeling it in no time at all. I can 100% promise you, because all you're looking at is 4 second a lift, 4 second a lower, brief pause at the bottom, brief pause at the top. Each rep should take about, 8 to 10 seconds. I guarantee you do that for a couple of minutes and you're going to be feeling that little sucker in no time at all. It's going to hurt its alarm, Steph, and it will wake the fuck up.
It is my most, honestly, most loved way to train is, time under tension. It's definitely tempo training. It's just my jam. And a lot of people just always ask, why do you train so slow, Steph? Like, why? Like, literally, it's probably the most DMs I get in like my whole Instagram is, why do you go so slow? It's like,
oh my God, I love that.
I swear.
You do it. I watch you and I'm like, yeah, man, this bitch is doing it right.
I know, and it's just funny to me that so many people are actually oblivious to understanding or knowing that time under tension is probably like the sweet spot for hypertrophy here. Okay, so if you really want to map out a muscle, you want it to pop more, you want to get trap more blood flow into that muscle, you want to really resist the actual force. So that's going to be your eccentric movements, your negatives, right? So if you actually are focusing just on the concentric, which is where I feel most people learn how to actually control, is normally the concentric movement, versus the eccentric, they just rush through it and they just immediately just blast and just use the joint like as a range of motion, right? Like let's just run through it, right? Versus if you really resist and try your best, and like Ali said, dropping the weight, man, leave the ego at the door. Don't even focus on strength when you're focusing on time under tension. Heck, I actually start at lighter weight and start increasing my load as I go up if I need, obviously, more. And if I don't feel I could go up to sacrifice my form, then that's the weight you stay at. And it's all good if it's only 15 pounds or 30 kilos and y'all's, obviously weight. So it's okay. It's just more about,
progression though will still occur under the time under tension, Steph, because you've done it before and I've done it, where we might not necessarily increase load, but guess what we do? We increase the time that we take to get to the bottom. Have you ever done a 10-second hack squat? Holy shit. You know what? I challenge everyone listening to this. I want you to pick an exercise that's like that in the week ahead. And I want you to think about starting out 3 second lower, 1 second pause, 3 second upper, 1 second pause. And I want you to eventually try to work that up without changing the weight to a 10-second lower. I swear to God, you're going to be like, I feel like I've just lifted a car. You're going to be like, that feels like that was 100 kilos in a shoulder press. I mean, whatever it is you choose to do, I swear to God, you'll understand what we're talking about. And the beautiful thing about that, right? If we're controlling the movement and we're increasing the quality of the reps, we will be able to significantly reduce the likelihood of injuries. But we're also using technique like that, like using the tempo, it's going to increase our form and mastering of the form. It also develops neuromuscular adaptations at a far safer weight. So it's much easier to put the ego aside and knowing, slow it down, pause, use the prescribed tempo, or increase your tempo, use less weight. And it's going to be a lot less stress on your joints due to the recruitment of muscle fibers under the whole process. Like, I mean, who doesn't want to have the process of being, and you will inevitably build strength by doing this too. So should you then choose to go and try to do a max rep testing structure, you're probably going to find you'll be blown away by how much more you push without even having worked towards it necessarily in a formatted way. So, tempo lifting is, it's beautiful. Time under tension itself for me is where you're just literally focused in that mind muscle connection, where you're really trying to elicit a, protracted time under that load. And then if I'm pure tempo, then, that's a little bit different. And I might be focused on a specific tempo that's been set, where you might be reading it. Now, I don't know about you, Steph, but how many times have you had someone go, what the hell are these 4 numbers for, man? Like, they pick up their program, they've got the little 3.3.1.0, and they look at you like you've just spoken to them in, I don't know, Spanish, which in Australia, everyone will be looking at me really.
Why are you giving me a math equation, Ali? It's like, you want me to do that?
Like, what are we doing? Are we doing algebra in the middle of squats or what? But it's like that, right? And okay, so just for everyone listening to this, right? How to read that tempo. So you got your little 4 numbers. They're sitting there on your printout or on your little app. You've got to open on your phone. You're freaking the fuck out. You don't know what it is. This is what it is. This is what it is. So our very first number is always going to be our eccentric portion. Now, for a lot of you, you hear the word eccentric and you're like, well, what the hell is that? No, it's not a side dish. It is literally the descent of the exercise.
Yes.
So I want you to think that wherever the load is coming down, that is your eccentric portion. So squatting down, it's the lower of the body, lowering of the body in a pull-up. It's literally the downward motion. The second number is the number of, or the time frame of the pause at the bottom. So for argument's sake, say we're doing a paused box squat, or we're doing a paused chest press, you know, and we've got the barbell on our chest. We get to the bottom, we pause with the bar on our actual chest or an inch above it, or we're pausing in that bottom range of the squat for a set period of time. Like if it's a 3-3-1-0, then it's a 3-second pause at the bottom, right? A lot of the times, though, you'll see 3-0, and that means no pause. It's a 3-second down, straight back up for a slow or an explosive. So again, depending upon what we're trying to elicit in this program, whatever one you're reading or following, that'll be the dictation of the, you know, response, so the low response. So the third number in the 4-set series is your concentric. So opposite to the eccentric, this is now our ascension. It's where we're moving the weight up, and in some cases, it may be seen as a number X. So some people might see the X instead of a number. That means explode as fast as possible. Get the fuck up. That's basically
Get the fuck up is exactly right.
The fourth number is the pause at the top. So when you have a fourth number pause, that's a really great chance then for you to reset, you know, restructure maybe the position of the bar, brace. It might be a lockout of the lats once again prior to the eccentric motion of the next squat. So to recap, first number is your downward motion. Second number is your pause at the bottom. Third number is your ascension, the speed within which you get to the top. And the fourth number is the pause or the reset point at the top itself. Now, you know, there'll be some things, and this is again where you can have fun with numbers, people. Like, don't ever shy away from tempos and time and attentions. I don't know about you, Steph, but I love doing this with like a leg press. You get to the top, but there's no pause at the top. So when you get the ascension, might be fast, no pause, straight back down. So it's almost like up, down, and you are actually noodle leg beyond noodles. You are, I don't know,
same with the hack squat and same with just regular squats. Oh, I'm with you. It's the same feeling whenever you do it with squats and hack squat. Like if you do it to where you don't pause at the top and you are just keeping that tension in your quads, your freaking legs are fried. So I'm with you. I love tempo training. To me, time under tension is like I said, it's my sweet spot. It's honestly where I feel a lot of people are just lacking in their training. If once they start focusing, you know, on this next portion, once you already, you know, actually implemented the first couple things that we talked about, this is the next place you can start, you know, obviously progressing and leveling up and trying to actually track your tempo and, you know, how long you stay within, you know, obviously the pocket, which is like the bottom range of that, of the rep. And I think like Ali said, making sure you are going through the full range of motion of every muscle and, you know, seeing where maybe your strengths are and weaknesses are, maybe some muscle groups, if your eccentric phase, or maybe it's your concentric phase and others, and kind of calling, you know, out those muscles that are like, ooh, we need to work on more eccentric work for my biceps because that's where I normally swing back down. I need to focus on slowing down, you know, obviously that tempo versus maybe, you know, with your rows, maybe you do well coming actually down, but you're just exploding up every single time. And, you know, that's actually your concentric needing to actually be slowed down versus your eccentric always being the one focusing on it. So find those areas within your lifts that you're normally rushing through.
And this is a really great way of looking at it. I love how you put that, Steph, because this is really highlighting the fact that, you know, tempo training allows you to break down the mechanics of the movement. So it shouldn't just be about jumping in then and thinking, you know, anyone listening to this, oh, I'm just going to go straight in. I'm just going to start throwing, you know, weight to account. I don't want you to just do that. I want you to actually think about what is the purpose of this lift? What are the primary muscles I'm trying to activate? Is my core engaged and set? Like, what is the mechanic of the lift? And then I literally would, you know, sort of be encouraging you to use the tempo as a way to feel your body working its way through the whole, you know, the whole mechanism. So you'll make so much more progress, people, by focusing on mastering a few few moves, the main compounds, with a variety of tempos, rather than constantly switching up your exercises to confuse your muscles, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There's no such fucking thing. Frankly, all you're going to get is little to no growth. What are you lifting for? You're lifting to create change. So whether you're a beginner or a seasoned athlete, seriously, one of the best ways you can possibly increase strength and avoid injury is to consistently maintain proper movement mechanics. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're not fucking rushing through it like I don't know, like we're playing Tetris on a piece of equipment. It's like ding, 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 ding. It's not like that.
There's a time and a place.
Especially something like a squat, Steph, right? Like how many times have you seen someone rush, right? And if you slow it down and actually look at it, you can see, are they properly hinging from the hips? Is their midline stable? Do they actually have proper tracking of the knees? But they disregard a lot of these things when they're just rushing. So I think slowing it down gives you the opportunity to really assess that and go, right, well, I can actually feel where I get my butt wink at this portion of the lift. So what's happening at that portion? Is it my breath that needs work? Is it my lockout that needs work? You know what I'm saying? You start to be able to really master your craft. So if you're looking to Steph or you're looking to some of the other big names in the sport, that's what they do. They don't just rush it. They fall in love with picking apart every single inch of execution in a lift. That's what we've done for the last, 5 years, I could say would be my timeline. I've gotten very picky about how I'm executing stuff. I've had to with my injury, but now I just love it. I love pulling shit apart and putting it together how it's meant to operate, right?
It is. And I think like where you even said, like over the last few years, we've had to really dissect our bodies more with our imbalances and really bring in more symmetrical physiques and balanced physique because of what we do. And I think that's kind of where, like I said, it came to surface and it was spotlighted for myself that a lot of these things that I was oblivious kind of to, just because I like to train, I was just like, you know what, let me go in here and just lift heavy. And I thought that it was pretty cool. Your ego really does grow. So if you're one of those people that right now you have really high ego just with heavy lifts, but you're in pain, your body aches, and that was me. Okay, this is why I'm bringing it up. It's like I lifted all the time. I didn't really recover. I didn't really take breaks and rest. I took breaks within my sets, but I didn't really take breaks within my recovery days. So it was just one of those things that even though I was able to lift this, that's actually when I was able to lift the most. But was I doing it correctly? Probably yes, in form, but was I breaking down the muscle tissue the way I probably could have? Absolutely not, because I wasn't focusing on unilateral work. I wasn't focusing on really bracing, obviously my core. I was just getting that weight up. And there's a big difference in your physique too. Let me tell you, when I first started, it was just more of those things. Ooh, you definitely got muscle, but it's kind of like all over the place. Like you got huge traps, woman, like your traps are, really big, and you got massive quads, like your quads are huge, but your glutes and your hamstrings.
Where are the hamstrings?
Like we need to do some work here. And it was definitely one of those things where, again, if you lean out and you've maybe, seen yourself to where it's like, oh, I lost my butt. It's like I have a pancake butt. And it's like literally one of those things where you get really self-conscious after your first show. I think after that, you just really start going back in and you need to just break down, and desensitize, and actually see those areas that need to actually be activated correctly. And you may just have muscle tightness. You may need to see a physio. You need to obviously do some mobility work on your own. These are things that you have to obviously set yourself up with proper setup techniques. I think that one thing that will actually lead into this topic is that we keep talking about, obviously setting up and obviously making sure we warm up. We obviously pay attention to our core, obviously to tempo training and resistance and time under tension, but also your setup. If you have real big imbalances, I think the setup is so important. If you have an imbalance to where your knee hits the floor, right? Elevation and trying to make sure you're elevated to a point where you have a better range of motion within, of course, your hip, or if that's, of course, your glute. If you're doing a hip thrust and your hip, of course, you hit the floor, clearly you need some elevation. You need to, elevate your feet to be able to have a better range to activate your glute and, obviously go through a deeper range. So that ties in with, the full range of motion of the muscle, but that comes with your setup. So if you're maybe not feeling a full activation of a muscle, look at your setup and see if you need some elevation or if you need to maybe set up differently with even a foot or toe elevation, I'm sorry, as well as like maybe using boxes, right? Sometimes for me, like actually hinging correctly and sitting down into the actual box, obviously help me being able to explode upward and properly engage my glutes and quads versus just always trying to hinge and just trying to get your back and, your quads to kind of do it all at once. If your technique is off, find setup ways that are going to allow you to properly activate the muscles you're trying to do. So make sure you're tempo training as well as, doing your mobility, your warm up and cool down, as well as, of course, time under tension, because that is I think the king here at the end of the day.
Oh, I think so too. Like I love it. And I guess, look, I had someone ask me this question on my Instagram post the other day. I was like, that's actually it was a very interesting question. Can you exclusively train to exclusively weight loss? And I'm like, well, it's a bit of a loaded gun question, because the reality is you'll never lose weight unless you're in a caloric deficit. And that has a lot more to do with food than it does with weight training. But I guess if we were to look at this and people were to go, okay, well, how do I best structure weight training in order to have a specific goal, right? So if you're not working with anyone, you don't have a coach, you're just winging this by yourself. These are some pretty broad stroke mechanisms that I thought we could run through that might be sort of, a good potential target range for you when it comes to reps and sets and things to consider for different goals. So if you're trying to lose weight, people, yes, exercise is key. We need expenditure. But at the end of the day, if you're eating all the bakery and having all of the bread or all of the donuts or all of the whatever in excess, because none of those things are in themselves going to make you fat ever. But if you're in excess every single day of what your movement is, then you're never going to lose weight. So I would answer her question by saying that you could literally perform any kind of weight training, not anything specific, but any kind movement in and of itself. And as long as you're in a caloric deficit, you are going to lose weight. That's the end of the story, right? But when we are weight training, we are also going to be gaining some good quality lean tissue, which is in of itself a much denser active tissue. So I would be suggesting, if your strategy is to potentially, lose body fat, I'd be probably looking initially at sets of, probably sets of 4 in an exercise, reps at about 8, having an intensity or an RPE, which is something that Steph talked about earlier. So people that aren't used to using a rate of perceived exertion, just think about it like this, having 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. So you're not quite at failure. I think people automatically assume that you have to do lots of light weights for tons of reps and almost cardiovascularly approach your training in order to lose body fat, but you don't. It's just be in a caloric deficit, aka eat fewer calories than you're actually burning, so that you actually won't have a ton of energy reserve to do some really high reps. Realistically, you should be doing that sort of 8 to 10 range and focusing on them and doing the tempo and doing the time and attention and really mastering each rep. Quality reps over quantity of reps is always going to get you a better result. Don't you agree, Steph?
Always.
What else would you add to the to lose body fat approach for people?
I think one of the things that a lot of people oversee, and it's just a tool that we've already discussed, we've talked about, and it's just tracking your food. I think they just always drop the ball with really not understanding what their actual intake is. And like you said, it doesn't matter what actual training program they're following. It could be an endurance, just cardio regimented program, or it could be resistance training, which clearly would be more ideal for them to build more lean muscle tissue. But if they're burning calories and they're moving, they just need to know how much they're intaking. So if you are not tracking your food and you're struggling with losing weight, you need to track your food. You may be lying to yourself about the things that you're actually having and under actually calculating and thinking. That's actually what most studies will show, that most people under calculate what they eat. So if you really track, you'll see, okay, I actually am having a lot more than I expected, so it's like
that's 100 grams of rice.
So
because I remember the first time I did it properly, right, and started tracking properly, and I actually weighed shit out. This is going back so long ago, like 12 years ago. I remember my very first actual expression. The thing that blew my mind was, what are 100 grams of rice? That actually, I cried. I was like, what the fuck is that? That's like 2 spoonfuls for me. Like my spoon is a shovel, mind you. I do like my food, people. But I I can still to this day, it feels like yesterday, I'm still heartbroken on the inside. I can still hear it breaking and shattering like glass. But fuck, man, when you do get, because that's the thing, you look at the bowl and you're like, oh yeah, that'd be about, I don't know, 150.
It goes back to that, you know, our label of, you know, our labeling of nutritional literacy. It's like what we were talked about on that episode. It's like talking about actually thinking sometimes that you're eating something healthy and you're really not. Like, so for example, like here, it's just a very big marketing technique. I don't know how it is over there with like a lot of the fruit juices and them being all healthy and natural for you. And obviously like for example, like the naked juices, I'm sure you guys have them out there. And it's like, they at least have like
10 kilos of
grams of
oranges.
sugar. Yeah, and like 50 grams of sugar per like, you know, the container. And it's, and again, like if you're getting things all natural and you are having fruit and you're getting it naturally, we're at a different story. But when you're actually thinking you're consuming something and it doesn't have calories and it doesn't have carbs and you're just like, it's healthy, it's just a drink, you know, you're drinking your calories and again, tracking. So to answer your question, Allie, it would be, for anyone that is really trying to lose some weight, it's making sure you move, just like you said. Doesn't matter what, you know, just do what you love. If you love to dance, freaking dance every day and burn some calories. If you like to run, go out and run, you know, outdoors. If you want to, you know, go to the gym and hit some weights and, you know, do some, you know, reps of 8 to 10, like, you know, we were talking about, then, you know, go for it. But make sure it's not just 8 to 10 reps of light weight. It's actually 8 to 10 reps of challenging weight for you for all those exercises. And track your food, know where your intake is, see if your calories are actually, you know, matching what you're intaking.
Yeah. And then if we move on from the flip side to that, but you're going to see this has got a very relevant common theme here. There's a thread between the same deal. If we then want to go to build mass, it's going to take a little bit more finesse than the whole losing weight concept, right? Because while we're going to start looking at a heavier load and lifting a heavier weight for getting stronger, you really need to have a focus on the entire setup, mastering the foundation stuff we've discussed. You need to have maintenance level, energy balance, and or surplus calories, end of story. You can't be doing it in a caloric deficit. You can have elements of recomposition in that space, but it's not going to be the big life and physique changing muscle gain that you could get if you're in a surplus. Right. That's for damn sure. And you need rest and recovery. Like this is where they're not just food, but fucking sleep becomes super, super important here. Like you really do need to have, you know, a focus on the fact that you're not overdoing it too. So unlike, you know, the fact that we're doing a light to moderate sort of weight range when we're just, you know, smashing out those 5 sets above, we would be looking at sort of 3 sets, working sort of in that 8 range up to about 12. That's a nice hypertrophy range of, you know, reps. And then focused on, you know, in the whole structure setup, the mechanics, mind-muscle connection, super, super important. And then gradually increasing here in the actual load. So we are actually gradually increasing the reps each set until you just try failure and increasing load. You'd be seeing some elements of tempo here, but if it's a pure strength based, they're used in very strategically placed phases in your training, in your periodized training. They're not used all of the time. But the key here is, again, must be married to a very solid nutritional protocol, one that is going to see you in energy balance and or potentially surplus for, you know, different times of the phase that you're in this approach. And then recover. Like everything is going to be about execution and recovery when it comes to building serious size and or strength.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Steph?
Look, you hit it on the head. Everything that you absolutely said was honestly what I think we didn't even really touch too much on, because we were really talking about tempo training and, you know, time under tension and, you know, setup would be the progression, right? Like progressive overload. And I think that would be one thing to, you know, make sure you take home today is once you get all of those things actually ticked off and, you know, you've done them, you're doing, you know, of course, quality reps. Now it's time to make sure each set, like you said, is making sure you're actually increasing that RPE every workout. And it's maybe not actually by the session, but maybe week by week, you know, look to see a weekly actual progression there and, you know, challenge yourself. it has to be challenging, y'all. Like it really does. It's not easy. Like, especially if you want to build some muscle. If you're listening to this, and Allie can definitely agree, building muscle isn't easy. It's not just like pain. It's not painless. It's actually painful. And you have to go through that pain, and you have to go through, obviously the actual pain of making sure that you're getting stronger. And that does come with, of course, maybe thinking you can't finish and maybe thinking you can't go up. So that is a mental block that we end up kind of putting there, but it's just about making sure you still challenge yourself. You keep your training very, of course, similar. Like we were not changing drastically. I love incorporating new moves. I think that's always keeping me definitely engaged, but I keep the same core foundation of my other basic movements. It's just maybe progressing into some other movements that I know now I'm ready to, actually tackle. So make sure you keep, of course, following all those things we talked about, and then just keep challenging yourself during, your actual sessions in your weights.
And I think probably the biggest take home message for anyone listening to this is it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to be in the gym for hours. You don't have to have a million exercises. You don't have to have what the Instagram influencer just did with this makeshift bloody, I don't know, crazy exercise she's just created because it might look good for her butt under certain lighting. Like, I don't know, but you don't need it is what I'm saying.
Stick to your program and follow it.
Stick to your basics. Exactly.
Oh my God. Stick to it.
Master the basics.
Yes.
And just learn, about what your goals are, because look, we didn't touch on it, but for anyone listening to this, look, I'd say most of you are going to be more so interested in, body recomposition, body shaping, body sculpting, or growing mass and getting stronger. But for those of you that are listening that are in endurance or, sports that require you to be agile, mobile, be able to run or jump or any of those things, then you need to think about it a little bit differently again and look at, do I need fast twitch fibers? Do I need slow twitch fibers? What ones am I going to need to be training more than others? Would having more size on me be detrimental to my performance? Well, then shit, I'm not going to go and do 3 sets at 8 or less reps. I'm going to keep my rep range in 12 or more and build my endurance. Just think about what's your goal. What are the requirements of your sport? What performance mechanisms do you need? And then consider aesthetic component after, if you're not in the aesthetic game like we are. If you're in aesthetic and performance, then, the earlier conversations we had are going to be more relevant to you. But if you have no idea what you're doing and you'd like to gain, insight, there's plenty of resources. The internet is a bit of a minefield though, so be careful. You may end up with your legs blown off in the Gaza Strip before you know it if you follow the wrong piece of advice. But there are plenty of great coaches that you can reach out to. I'd always suggest you go with someone with your sports-specific experience in mind first. Or if you have a specific ailment, think about your prehab, rehab, and allied health specialists that then can architecturally design the parameters that a face-to-face person and or online person can go and implement and construct with you, right? So think about it like that. Always get clearance if you have injury for anything that you are trying or doing. People don't go rushing into anything. And I will caveat and say that all of the stuff we've discussed today are broad line principles, and they should be considered with your individual requirements, at heart and at mind before you go and implement anything we've talked about today. And if you'd like to reach out to either of us, we're always happy to discuss all things training and food. We fucking love it.
Yes,
especially the food.
Especially the food.
But you can find us on all of our platforms and on the Queen Divas, and we've got our Queen Divas email, so don't ever hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear how you found today's episode. We hope you got some great stuff out of it.
I had a blast talking to everyone obviously here today, and you, Allie. So I hope you guys were able to, obviously take some take homes and learn a few tidbits of us, and, definitely keep giving us some feedback and comments, just because it always is helpful to know what you guys are actually wanting to hear from us. And, at this point, I think that you guys are, definitely our fans. And, I think that we really, really enjoy and just honestly like bringing as much educational content as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that takes the time to share our posts and share our episodes and send us such beautiful messages, because we really, really
so
appreciate
sweet.
it.
Honestly,
Not one of them
sweet.
goes unnoticed.
Yeah,
so
thank you guys.
all.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to tuning in next week, and we hope you all have an amazing week, crushing that training session of yours. In the meantime, that's it from Steph and I. Have a wonderful week, everybody. See you next time.
Everyone. Oh, bye.
See you, babe.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.